We pray, God, we want you to search us, we want you to break us, and we want you to send us. But then as I began thinking about this next series, I realized sometimes there's things in our life that need to be taken out of the way in order for something good to start. And so a couple weeks ago, I began with, we need to stop making excuses. Today, I want us to look at stopping complaining. Now, I've entitled this series, Stop It, and I was reminded this morning as I was thinking about my family, and especially my sister, actually, my twin sister and I, we used to have it, we were born that way, by the way. Anyways, somebody got that. She was a hummer. She just hummed all the time. She made noises, little creaky noises. She'd be like, or hum a song, or whatever. She was always making. I always whistled, so I always drove my other sisters nuts whistling. But she just hummed. We would be driving down the car, and she'd be humming, just. And so I would sometimes lean over, and she'd be making some sort of noise or doing something. I'd go, oh, Darcy, stop it. And she would look at me, and she had this little grin, and it was never mocking. She's the least mocking person on the planet. She was so gentle. But she always had this little sense of humor. And she would say with this little grin on her face, stop. Which meant I didn't tell her to stop humming. And so she said, it now becomes the direct object. And I told her to stop it, and it is some nebulous, fictitious thing. And she goes, I stopped it, but I'm going to keep humming because you didn't ask me to stop humming. You get it? Anyway, so this message series, Stop It, does not preclude the fact that the first weekend was Stop Making Excuses, and today is Stop Complaining. Now let's think about it for a minute. What do you complain about? The weather. Yeah, it's not this weekend. I don't know. Maybe some of you are. Maybe some of you love snow and are missing it. I'm not one of those people, but maybe you are. What are some other things we complain about? Maybe traffic. Can't find a parking place at the mall. Well, come on.
Being sick.
What's that?
Being sick.
Being sick. Oh, that's almost legitimate. Oh, politics. Oh my gosh, let's not go there. You'll give us something to complain about.
Your boss.
No.
Excuse me, Rick? Your boss? No. What else do we complain about?
The Detroit Lions.
We complain about a lot of stuff. Okay, who complains more, men or women? Women. Oh, I don't know, you guys. That was a trick question. Anyway, so we complain about a lot of stuff. This is what Job wrote.
We're your helpers.
Yeah, you're helping me, all right. This is what Job wrote. I loathe my very life. Therefore, I will give free rein to my complaint. You know anybody that's giving free rein to their complaint? Anybody know like one of those perpetual complainers that they don't stop complaining? How many people are here? Never mind, that are those people. And I speak out of the bitterness of my soul. What happened with Job? Does anybody know the story of Job? Did anybody not know the story of Job in this room? Anybody not know it? So you all know the story of Job. He loses everything in the matter of a few days. He loses family. He loses wealth. He loses everything. All he's got is like his wife and his life. And that's it. And even she tells him to curse God and die. He had something to complain about, you'd think. But one thing that really stood out to me in this verse, he says, I loathe my life. I'm just going to let my complaints be known. So often, I think, we're looking at all these outside stuff, traffic, weather, parking places, Detroit Lions, whatever. And down deep, there's something far more going on than what we want to realize. That down deep, so often in our hearts, something has wounded us, something has hurt us, something has happened, and out of that, we begin to respond to show you as we get into this. Now I've taken running back up. Yes, I took a whole month off, and it's horrible when you take a month off. I ran a marathon January 8th, and today 5 miles hurts. I don't know why one month does it. But as you know, I love to listen to the Word of God. I'm actually in a study right now, as I go through the Bible in a year, of the Israelites being freed from Egypt. Now, who complained the most in the Bible? The Israelites. It's crazy, really. It's so easy for me to be running and to be thinking about how bad the Israelites are. And I'll be like, I can't believe it. I mean, can you imagine all the miracles that these people were set free by? I mean, think about it. Goshen, where they lived, was exempt from the gnats. Goshen was exempt from the locusts that ate everything. Goshen was exempt from all the plagues, especially the worst one, where the firstborn of every living thing, human and animal, of the night of the Passover was killed, except those that applied the blood in Israel, in Goshen. And these guys are complaining. And I'm tempted to think, gosh, can you believe that? I wouldn't be complaining. Would you be complaining after seeing all that? I think so, probably. I look at Israel almost like a mirror nowadays of how prone I am to the same kind of sin. But anyways, they complain the most. And this is what the Bible says. In Exodus chapter 16, verse 4, verses 2 through 4. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. And the Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. Okay, God just set them free with all these miracles. Goshen's the only land that has food. Goshen was the only ones exempt from the plagues. God then delivers them out. Pharaoh chases them. God separates the Red Sea. They walk on dry land. The Red Sea closes in on the Egyptians to where their bodies wash up to shore. They see all this. I wish we just died in Egypt. I don't know. This is pretty radical if you ask me. At least there we sat, I added the at least, I can't help it, sorry. There we sat around pots of meat. Can you say pots of meat? Kind of like crock pots. And ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. Think about it. I want to go back to Egypt. What happened before Moses started to deliver them? The Egyptians were killing every male born to the Israelites. The only reason why Moses lived is because he was put into a little bed of reeds and put in the river where Pharaoh's daughter found him. I want to go back to Egypt. At least I had a pot of meat. You know one thing I noticed about complaints? We all complain, some of us, about traffic and whatnot, and we listed a bunch of some of them legitimate, some of them not. Brooklyn has become very busy, unless you're in New York. Our complaints are so relative, and some people complain about opposite things. Do you realize the weather this last weekend? It was too warm. I wanted snow. I don't think anybody's complaining about it, but somebody could be complaining about that. While the rest of us are so glad it didn't snow. Yeah. Complaints are so divisive. They're divisive. They're angry. They're selfish. I don't know of anything more negative, more destructive than complaints. And this is the thing about complaining. We wouldn't complain if we didn't have something to complain about, right? That's our excuse, because we got these excuses to complain. Because if your life were like this, you'd complain too. All the potholes in Michigan roads, for crying out loud, they're going to tear apart my car. And we complain about everything.
That's legitimate.
Many complaints are. Should we complain? What does God view complaining? Let me give you 2 things about complaining. The first thing is, and this is why complaining is so dangerous, actually. The first one is this. Complaining offends the very heart of God. Here, in Numbers it says this. Now the people complained about their hardships in hearing of the Lord. And when he heard them, his anger was aroused. Then fire from the Lord burned among them and consumed some of the outskirts of the camp. Okay, so if you come home someday and your grass, what's left of it, is just like scorched, and your trees are black, and your house has got black marks, somebody in your house took it too far, okay? I'm just saying. This is what happened. Complaining offended God, and his anger was aroused, and he said, I'm done with it, and they were gone. Moses got so fed up with their complaining, he was having a discussion with God, almost complaining to God about their complaining. And you know what God told Moses? He said, they're not complaining against you, they're complaining against me. It offends the heart of God. You want to know something else about complaining? Number 2, complaining carries significant consequences. I liken complaining onto this. It's like spiritual bad breath. Anybody been around somebody with bad breath? Hopefully it's not the person sitting next to you. What do? They begin to talk to you, and it's inevitable that the person with bad breath wants to be this far from your face. Have you ever noticed that? They do. It's like, you are in my comfort zone space right now. And they get about this far. It's like, yeah, I totally understand. You got gum? Oh, you begin to back away, and nobody knows what I'm talking about, do you? That's what complaining's like. It repels. It pushes people away. Now, what did I tell you where complaining came from? It comes down here. So what generally happens, somebody gets hurt. Out of that, they begin to respond. And they see life through a set of lenses in which they can begin to complain. And what they're doing really, and this is the sad part, what they're really doing is crying for help. And all the while, the very help that they need most, they're pushing away. You guys, you know what I'm talking about? So anyways, complaining carries significant consequences. And in Numbers it says this, how long will this wicked community grumble against me? I have heard the complaints of these grumbling Israelites. So tell them, as surely as I live, not one of you will enter the land I swore with uplifted hand to make your home. That whole generation, except Joshua and Caleb, could not go into the promised land. God saved them with miraculous power. He led them out of Egypt. They crossed the Red Sea. They were fed manna from heaven and quail from heaven. He led them by a pillar of fire by night, a cloud by the day to shade them. And all they did is complain the whole way, never trusting God. And God said, I'm done. Your kids can go in there, but you can't. It carries significant consequences, folks. A couple chapters later, the sons of Korah, through their complaints, got so fed up with Moses that they actually created a rebellion, and the ground opened up and swallowed them up. My mom used to tell me that when I was a kid. She'd say, quit your complaining. You know what happened to the Israelites? And I'd look at her with big wide eyes. I don't want the ground to open up. She's back there. She tests it. She remembers. I learned not to complain. It's not good. It offends God. It carries consequences. I wonder how often we thwart the blessing of God in our life through our attitude towards things in life. How often does God want to move in our life and we're so busy seeing the negative, we never see God moving? Listen, if you want something to complain about, you'll find something. But actually, let me give you this example. I think that's what I meant. I've got an example. This family, this couple go to this realtor. And they go to this realtor and they say this. They say, she begins to show them houses all over. They're moving to a new town, and not one house is good enough. There's something wrong with this one. There's something wrong with that one. That one doesn't have enough space. I don't like the color of this one. I don't like the carpet. I don't like the neighborhood. Finally, they get to the last one. None of them is good. But they ask the realtor this: what are the people like here? And the realtor says, well, what are the people like in your town? Oh, they're the most negative, critical, gossiping people. They're judgmental. The realtor looked at him and said, I'm really sad, because it's kind of like how they are here too. Next week, the realtor's taken another couple through the same town, the same houses. They loved every house. They couldn't decide. They get to the last one. They go, well, what are the people like here? And the realtor said, well, what are they like in your hometown? They're wonderful. We have so many friends. We have block parties. We're going to miss them. We have such great people in our town. And the realtor said, you're in luck. They're a lot like that here too. Sociologists have a term for it. There's a technical term, actually. And it's called this: confirmation bias. Confirmation bias. And it's a teaching that says if you have a preconceived idea about something, you will actually search out, find, or interpret every new experience through that preconceived idea. Let me give you an example. A woman gets hurt by a man. All men are jerks. Now, are all men? I'm going to ask the men this. Are all men jerks? No. What happens? Through a hurt, through a wound, something that happens in our life, we begin to look at life through those lenses. We carry that pain in everything we are. Life, according to Job, sucks. And because it does, we begin to complain about everything else because we see everything through those lenses. You see, complaining carries these negative consequences, but I'm here to say maybe something a lot deeper has been going on inside of our hearts that we haven't let go of. For instance, one of the reasons why sociologists believe that complaining especially is on the rise, because they do all this kind of studies, I like to read about them, is because families are so much smaller. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Families are smaller. See, I only have 2 kids. They're my little monkeys. I love them. Mom called me a house ape. I beget monkeys. It's the way it goes. I love my little monkeys. I wish I had more monkeys now. Lots of them. I'm getting too old for it. Anyways, all things aside. So I have 2 kids. But what happens when something's up with one of my kids? My whole world drops. Because life revolves around my kids. The big families in the past, I came from a family of 4. My wife came from a family of 4. Things were different in families of 4. I knew kids at school that came from families of like 11. And families of 6 were very common. Life didn't revolve around the kids. Because when dinner was called, if they didn't make it, they didn't complain about the dinner because they weren't allowed to, number 1. And number 2, it might be gone, so we better try to get there. You know what I'm saying? So life didn't revolve around the kids. See, now what happens, we live in these small families, we grow up, life revolved around us, and what becomes the center of our universe? We do. Instead of God being on the throne of the heart, we're on the throne of our heart. And whenever life doesn't revolve around us the way we think it should, we complain about it. You don't have to say amen, just say, oh me. It says this in Proverbs, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. What's in here, folks? I'm not preaching behavior modification up here. Yeah, okay, stop complaining. Go home and just try it without changing this. It will never happen. It'll never happen. Why? Because it's here that we have to deal with. We have to go back to those places where we became God of our throne and we took control of our lives and we said when something happened, we said, I will never let that happen again. And we make these vows in our life where we say, God no longer has power there. to stop complaining? Stop it. Come back to Jesus and allow him to take his place. You know, Paul, I might have gotten ahead of myself here a little bit, but that's okay, because I'll close with this. He wrote this in Philippians. He said, do everything, not a few things. He says, do everything. Not when the road is perfectly smooth, everything's going your way, and that life is exactly how you want it. He says, do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a crooked and depraved generation. Do you know where Paul was when he wrote this? Is anybody? Prison. If I were sitting where he's sitting, I'd be like, what in the world am I doing here? God, why did you let this happen? God, I was doing your will. I was preaching the gospel. I didn't do anything wrong. I don't deserve this. On and on it goes. Now, Paul, he's encouraging everyone to not complain as he's sitting there. And then he says this, but even if I'm poured out like a drink offering, in other words, he knows that he could die right here, right there. Even if I die, I want you to know this. On the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me. In other words, I am glad your faith is strengthened. I'm glad your life is enriched. I'm glad you can rejoice with me because of Jesus. Paul knew what Jesus did for him. And we lose sight of that so often. I deserve hell. I deserve death. I don't deserve anything in this life. Everything I have came from God, and I can only be grateful to his grace and his mercy for what I have. You see how that puts things in a little different perspective. When I put God back on the throne, and I say, God, I forgive those that hurt me because I know how much you forgave me. I let go of my pain because I know how much through Jesus you healed me. And I entrust my life to Christ. That's how you stop it. When you give your life to Jesus. And he is ready. Let's pray. With every head bowed and every eye closed, no one looking around. If you're sitting here this morning, and you're saying, Pastor Dan, I've never accepted Jesus as my Savior. I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to call you up. But if that's you, I do want you to raise your hand. Is there anybody here that says, Pastor, I do not know for certain if I were to die tonight, I would spend eternity in heaven. If that's you, just slip up your hand. Anyone at all. Maybe you're sitting here this morning and say, Pastor Dan, I slipped. Kind of like in the workouts. We slip sometimes. Or the food, or whatever. Sometimes we slip with God. And you say, I slipped. I know I'm saved. I know I'm going to heaven. But he is not on the throne in my heart right now. I've let things slip. I've become negative. I can feel it. And I can feel that I am not where I should be with him. Now's your time. Commit your heart to him. Recommit it. Devote it. Let go of the sins. Let go of the control. Invite him in. Father, I just lift each person here this morning. I pray, God, that you would heal us, you would make us whole, but that you would continue to lead us. Help us to take the things in our life out that have replaced you and put you back where you belong. Help us to follow you. In fact, we decide this morning follow you. In Jesus' name, amen. You're dismissed.